Welcome down, everyone, to another episode of Those Nerds You Know. My name is Ethan.
I'm Eddy.
I'm Scott.
And I'm Kaleigh.
And we are Those Nerds You Know.
We're a podcast where we talk about nerdy things like comics and TV shows and movies and anime and video games and anything else that is included.
Yep, that's about right. It's good.
Are you going to do that every time? Every time you're just going to stop for like 2 seconds and make me feel like I've said something silly.
The first one you did tonight was longer, so I thought you were going to go a bit longer.
Yeah,
but
well,
you
you know.
cut this one short.
That's what happens when you have a take two. Everything is more concise and perfect until Ethan stops talking.
Ethan is obviously the common denominator here.
Yes, we talk about nerdy stuff, but tonight we're going to take a little bit of a deviation and continue our Try to Scare Ethan trilogy by talking about another really spoopy topic, that being the haunting of one house of Hill.
Mm-hmm. The Haunting of Hill House Netflix series of the supernatural horror.
Which
AKA
actually isn't
Triple
on a
H.
hill, it's from the Hill family, which is confusing because
Indeed.
if you just read it out, it looks like the house on a hill or the house of the hill or something.
Indeed.
Yeah.
That's why I paused during my explanation, because I was about to say what the haunting of one house on a hill, but that would have been wrong.
It's based off of a 1959 novel of the same name by Shirley Jackson.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
She wrote some pretty crazy stories back in her day. One of which you probably know of as The Lottery, I think I read in high school, if you've heard of that. It's basically like this town of overpopulation. To control it, like they draw names, and whoever gets drawn gets killed, basically.
Oh.
Yeah.
Quaint.
Anyway. Yeah, she's very grim, very, very dark writings and stuff.
My mother-in-law, she read the book, and when she was much younger, I think when she was in college or high school age or whatever, and she was going over the story, and as she was getting about, a good bit through the beginning of it, we were like, this isn't like the TV series at all. Like, it's a very strong, we figured out it's a very strong deviation, but there are some aspects of it that are very similar to, like, character plot is very similar. Obviously, I'm assuming they had to do a lot of the things that they did for a modernization of this story because, the story's based in the time period that was written.
Yeah, it takes place in 1992 when this family, the Cranes, move into Hill House to renovate it and sell it so that they can build their own house. And
little flip.
Yeah, they're flipping it, and basically the story goes through like 2 different time periods. Back in 1992, when the kids are young, and then 26 years later, where the siblings are splintered, like the family's obviously broken apart and like not really talking to each other, and that's in 2018. So it's pretty current in time frame.
Gotcha.
And normally, I don't really like stories that are like this, that have this like, you get thrown in the middle of the story, and then it kind of flashes back between 2 time periods and everything. But this, it felt right.
Yeah, it felt cohesive. It felt a lot more
it made sense
understandable.
that they did it the way that they did. Yeah.
Yeah, because you
Honestly,
get pieces of both stories. So. Go ahead.
I really like it when stories can do that effectively and do it well. I actually really appreciate that. There's an anime called Bakano that I haven't seen all of, but if I'm correct, Scott, they do a lot of that. I know I've watched Durarara, which is by the same people, and they do a good effective job in that. Good ensemble cast anime. Honestly, I think Arrow does a decent job of it.
And Bakano is different in that it doesn't just flip between 2 time periods. It flips through different time periods within the same event that's happening
multiple.
as well. And so, just like Bakano, this series, once watched all the way through the first time, when you watch it through the second time, you pick up a lot of once you know like the full story, the whole idea. If you watch it again, you start to see like all these small details that you missed that also tie into the rest of the story, which was pretty mind blowing.
there's a lot of like misdirection in it. Like you think one thing's happening, but it's actually another thing. And they did really well with that too, because you don't really know what's going on, but everything pretty much makes sense in the end. So
Yeah, in the beginning, I thought it was, I thought it was this one monster that was hunting them, or that there was like this demon that was possessing people or something. But then it's spirits, but then it's something else, and it's all it comes down to like one cohesive thing. But it kind of strings you along as you kind of bring in the same conclusions that the people in the home kind of bring into their own lives, because they're trying to discern what's going on as well, and each of them have their own hypothesis or way of dealing with coping with the haunting, so to speak. And as we as viewers do the same thing, we kind of see what they're seeing in their eyes.
yeah, and they make it apparent with like you see a character looking at something, and then from another perspective, it's not there. Or in some cases, both of them see it, and it's very apparent that it's there. And they do really good with like weaving in and out of what's really happening and what's really not. So it's a good series. It's very good.
This story seems to follow around the specific children, and I guess it also follows around the father as well. But like the main drawing, I think, is of the children, how they coped with this event as children, and then how as adults they grew up and matured through it. And so we kind of the first 5 episodes, in fact, are like the story of Luke and the story of Nellie and the story of all these different characters, and we go kind of in an order. And in the beginning, we can kind of see like the story one way, but then as we pick it up and go to the other person's story, it fills in some of the gaps. And so by the time we got to the 5th episode, I was like, okay, we're going to get a full picture. And it started to make a collage of into one thing. Like it took all these different ideas and different things that happened and made it into one thing that we could understand simply.
Yeah. So it's very obvious that something happened, and we learned through the first episode of what actually like transpired for them to be broken as they are in adulthood. So basically, the family consists of Hugh Crane, Olivia Crane, and their 5 children: Stephen, Shirley, Theodora, Luke, and Eleanor.
Yep.
Each one has like gone pretty much kind of crazy and like secluded, except for like Stephen, who didn't really face a lot of the supernatural. He was kind of like he saw things happening, but he didn't see why, or like the he just saw the effects. So everyone was pretty much going crazy around him.
Okay, so what was he like too young, or was he just
no? He's the
spirits
oldest.
just not bother him?
He's the oldest.
Oh, got you.
He's also the most rational. He kind of takes things out of a logical way because he's the smarter, older one. He's like, what I saw wasn't what I saw, and what you guys saw was just an imagination, and a traumatic experience.
And he chalks it up to illness, like a mental illness. Like his whole family has it, and things are just deteriorating around him. So of them all, he's the most sane, I guess you could say, since he didn't experience those ghost flashes, or at least he didn't know that he saw ghosts, but that comes as later. Basically,
he wasn't haunted.
Yeah. So basically, we open with Stephen Crane, who is an author of the best-selling novel The Haunting of Hill House, which they make it as an autobiographical novel about his childhood experiences with the mansion. We come to learn that Hugh, their father, fled the mansion without his wife, basically traumatizing the kids because he gathered them all up like after something had happened. He's obviously freaking out and like trying to sneak through the halls to collect all 5 kids, and they don't know what's going on. Everybody's crying, and at one point Hugh comes into Stephen's room and like keeps him there. He's like, hush, be quiet, and like we see the doorknob like turn slowly and he holds the door. It's pretty crazy. Like that's like almost the first scene, like aside from like the introductions and stuff. So It's pretty intense. And after things kind of quiet from the door, they like rush out of the house and they get in the car and drive away without the wife, without their mother. And Hughes never explains what happens. So we don't know what was happening. We just know a bunch of kids are being traumatized by their clearly disturbed father.
and I like that aspect of it. Like, we don't find out as the viewer until like way past the halfway point of the series.
Yeah, it's like in the 7th or 8th episode that we actually get confirmation of what happened.
Yeah.
Makes you keep watching.
Yeah, right. So even though he wrote the novel, as I said, Stephen doesn't really believe in the paranormal because he didn't see any of the paranormal stuff happening. He just, his family was going crazy around him. And he basically told the story from what his siblings told him. So like what they experienced and stuff, he wrote that in the book and became this best-selling author.
He kind of becomes like a Stephen King like mockumentary kind of guy. Like what he does is he then goes to other people, interviews them for their experiences, and then he kind of dramatizes those experiences in novel form.
Yeah. And he like kind of poses as like this paranormal investigator to get stories, I guess, even though he doesn't believe it, which is interesting, I thought.
But it's interesting that he like, even though he doesn't believe, like it does seem like he wants to find evidence of things. Like he'll put up like infrared cameras, he'll put up like laser grids and stuff. Like he's actively looking for proof. He just doesn't find it.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to believe.
Yeah. But I mean that's good. There's a good reason for that because I mean his family is broken. He doesn't know anything except like, oh, it's just a mental disorder. But as we go through the first episode, we kind of see how the Crane family has become. So like Shirley, the oldest girl, she owns a mortuary with her husband.
Which they live in?
Yeah, they live like by the mortuary, and like it's really weird actually.
Well, their home is like a part of the mortuary. Like they've got a guest home that's adjacent. That's where Theo lives in, but they live in the building that's also the mortuary.
Yeah,
like their basement is where she does the body stuff, and like her kids like can like go down there and see them and stuff. And I'm like, this is a little weird for a family. Like,
yep, that sounds really weird.
But as we go, the younger kids, there's Luke and Nellie, or Eleanor, who are twins. Luke is addicted to heroin in order to push the haunting.
As a child?
No. This is like as
an adult.
like as a result of everything that happened. This is 26 years in the future.
Gotcha.
He turns
in
to
2018.
drugs.
Yeah, he's an addict. Eleanor tried to make a life happen for herself, but then she basically like devolved into crazy, and she doesn't recover from her haunting.
But hers didn't. I don't think hers occurred specifically from the house. It's just residual effects that happened afterwards. Like Luke's seemed to affect him almost immediately, and then kind of gradually got worse. But hers she didn't start to see these problems until like later on in her life.
Mm-hmm.
Like she kind of always suffered from like other stuff. Like she had like sleep paralysis and stuff, and that's kind of where she like started her life or whatever, was dealing with that problem. Yeah. But then it also kind of geared into like other crazy hauntings that she's found as she became an adult.
Yeah, and Theodora, who's kind of like the middle child, she's a child psychologist now, and she has like this psychic touch. When she touches something with her bare hands, like she can see the past and experience like feelings that the subject may have gone through, things like that.
Interesting.
She's both the bad A and also the empath. Like when she touches people with bare hands, she can not only like kind of read their minds, but also kind of like feel their experiences. And if she like touches something that was owned by them or close to them, she can kind of like get visions of what the origin was like. But she also, it's kind of made her jaded from the world a little bit, and so she's kind of like doesn't have a lot of empathy otherwise.
So like she has a lot of fake relationships. Like we see her like in a bar, like taking a girl home that she found, and things like that. So It's like false relationships with trying to make her feel better.
And to keep herself away from that, I think she wears these long gloves, like kind of like Rogue from X-Men, so that she doesn't feel them all the time, I think.
Yeah. So we're done with the exposition of the family, and then we start getting into the story of the haunting, and we have Nell, the youngest twin, having a breakdown. She tries to call all her siblings and for them to pick up, but nobody picks up. Eventually, she calls her dad, and she says something about Luke. I think the addict, saying she's worried about him and stuff. And then I think the dad realizes that she's at the house, which is pretty much abandoned right now.
Yeah.
And he
sounds spooky.
He's like, oh crap, you know. He's like, stay there, stay where you are. I'm coming to get you. Blah blah blah. And like the dad calls Stephen, the author, and is like, hey, you need to go help your sister. And I can't get there right now because he has to get a plane ticket because he's wherever off in who knowsville. And
why not tell her to get out of the house? Why tell her to wait in the house?
No, she's not in the house yet.
No,
she's at the house.
He didn't know she was in the house at the time, but
Yeah.
he knew that she needed to stay wherever she was, away from the home.
Yeah. But he kind of knew that she was at the house. I don't remember if she explicitly says it. She might. I can't remember. It's been about a month. But he figures it out, and Stephen is out, but he makes it back to his apartment, and he sees Luke, who's coming down, like with stolen stuff, or he's planning to steal stuff from Stephen to get drug money. So we assume
heroin money.
Yeah, we assume that, and Stephen's like, hey, you can keep the camera. He had a camera and like a tablet, an iPad tablet. He's like, hey, I'll give you money for the iPad. You can keep the camera, do whatever, but I need that iPad. And of course, Luke is like obviously solemn and like sad about it and stuff, but he gives him the iPad back and leaves. And he goes upstairs and sees Nell there, and we're like, whoa, why is she right there? And he's like, what are you doing here? And then he gets a phone call from the dad and from Hugh, and he tells Stephen that Nell committed suicide in the house. And Nell's standing there in his house, in his apartment. And this is like the first jump scare of the show, because like when he puts the phone down, like she's in his face, and he makes him fall back, and it's pretty crazy because it's obviously she's like, her face is kind of colorless and gray.
That's actually one of my favorite scenes too, because you're like, Nell, why are you letting like your brother steal all your other brother's stuff? Come on. And then you're like, she's dead. And you're like, oh,
that's why.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So so she's obviously committed suicide, and she's there. So.
And this is also what's cool about this is Stephen's first physical brush that he knows of where it's a paranormal activity.
Yeah. It sounds like his first experience with it. Interesting.
Yeah. It's a pretty crazy opener. Like, it's definitely something that can hook you. You're like, oh crap, why is Nell there, and she committed suicide, blah blah blah, Pretty crazy.
Yeah. I'm hooked.
You're hooked. Good, because we have 9 more episodes to go through. That was all just the first episode. But,
and what I really like about the show is they do a great job ending it in a cliffhanger.
Yeah,
so, like,
a lot
me
of
and
those
Scott
episodes
are
are
like,
cliffhangers.
oh my gosh, what's the next one?
Yeah.
We have one more,
Making you binge.
I think we watched like the whole series in 2 sittings. We just like sat down and watched 5, and then we sat down and watched another 5. Like, we just could not stop.
Yeah.
But so after we see Stephen's like first person experience with this, then we kind of go into the rest of the story as we would normally see it. So like we see kind of what Theo and Shirley.
Well,
and
the way
Luke
they
and
do
stuff
it
were
is
dealing
each
with.
episode in the beginning is another child's view of it. So they did what Steven saw, and then the next episode is Shirley.
Yeah, with the kittens.
Yeah, and how
So.
she saw things.
Yeah.
So Shirley is the one that has the mortuary home, and the reason why she got that way is because when she was a kid, she had this box of kittens that she found, and she wanted to take care of them, but they all kind of died.
Can I do a vet PSA real quick though?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Never give a kitten milk. That's not good for them. Like cow milk, give them like kitten milk. You can make it. There's cans you can buy from Walmart. There's recipes online. Do not give a cow's milk. And they need a heating pad or you're going to kill them. And don't feed them with droppers because they'll aspirate and die.
Yeah.
Okay,
You
sorry.
heard it here first.
Every single thing that these kids did to these
Was
kittens,
wrong.
she's like, "Oh my gosh, you're killing these kittens." She's like, "They didn't die of sickness. They didn't die of this. You killed them, kids."
Kill these kittens.
So she was a little
Yes.
sad about that. But so they have this deal with like the kittens die and everything, and that was kind of her first brush with like death. But then after her mother dies, she's worried that like they're going to be like the kitten, that her mom's going to look like the kitten, like they're just going to decay. She's going to decay and be sad and everything. But then she goes to the funeral and she sees that her mother's all made up and dressed nicely in the coffin. She looks beautiful, just like she remembers her. And the person basically quote unquote fixed her mother. And so she's like, I want to do that for other people. I want to fix their loved ones when they pass away. And so that's why she became this, which is a little weird for a kid to aspire to at that age, but whatever.
Yep.
Yep. That's it. Just yep.
Yeah.
What do you want to be when you grow up? I want to fix dead people. Okay.
All right. Well,
Please
So-
get out of my classroom.
post-traumatic stress. Okay. All right.
So fast forward to the 26 years later in the current age, Stephen calls Shirley and is like, "Hey, Nell died. She committed suicide," and of course, Shirley's freaking out, and because she's very fragile. She's still very fragile about things like her family and death and things.
You don't say.
But she tells them that she wants to do Nell's embalming and like do the funerals arrangements and stuff herself.
I think, like at the beginning, they were like, "This is crazy. You don't want to do this." But I'm like, yeah, this is crazy. I wouldn't, even if I was a person that did that, I wouldn't want to embalm my sibling.
I think I disagree. That like I know I'm weird,
Yes,
but
you are
like
weird.
I know that I would do it.
As long as you know, Kaleigh.
Yeah.
This is coming from a woman who enjoys autopsies.
No,
okay?
not autopsies, necropsies.
Okay.
Right? But I don't know. Like I know that I could do it right, and I would want to be that person to do it right. Like because I know I would like respect her body, and I know that I would do the makeup the right way, make sure that her like makeup is the way that she did it. Like no one else could do it as good as me because I knew them better, and so I would like if you died, I would want to do your autopsy. In a non-creepy way.
Makes sense.
So whenever Shirley was taking care of the cats,
So
whenever
when
they
Scott
died,
mysteriously dies.
No one else will know. I will do the autopsy.
oh my god,
It's natural, of course. Natural death.
of course. But anyway, going back to the kittens, like at one point, whenever they had died, she saw that one was still kind of moving, like it looked like it was still trying to breathe, and she picks it up and she's like, "Look, it's still breathing," blah blah blah, and like something like crawls up its throat and like a cockroach comes out of its mouth.
Yeah. Spooky.
But see, the same thing happens
Delicious.
with Nell's body. Like actually, she sees like her throat moving, and then like the cockroach comes up out of her mouth as well, which I knew was going to happen because that was like they made such a big deal about it in the beginning. But but yeah, that pretty much freaks her out, and like she has a breakdown, and, like starts crying in the mortuary room and stuff. And so
There's
yeah,
a lot of that in this show. We see a lot of crying in the mortuary.
you know, as you do with
Where else are you gonna cry, Scott?
right?
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
But then we get into Theo and the twins.
Yeah,
Theo, she sees. So we see her as a kid. She's already had this ability, this power of like empathy and like touch
perception,
perception or whatever.
psychological perception.
And so even as a young kid, she was like touching the walls of the house and getting an idea of what people lived like and stuff like that. And you know, if someone said something to her and she wanted to know the truth, she would like touch them to make sure that they knew that the truth was what they were saying. She could like perceive if they were lying or not if she touched them.
But in this episode, basically they find a cellar in the bottom of their house that wasn't mapped on the blueprints that they had, and Luke finds a dumbwaiter and wants to go into it and go to the cellar to see what's under it, like use it as an elevator, as you do as a child. So he gets lowered down into the dark, dank cellar, and
Stupid.
there's this weird zombie thing underneath, and like it starts like crawling at him, and like it rips his shirt, and
why?
Yeah,
well, I don't think at all as a child I would have been like, you know what? I'll ride this spooky elevator down.
Well,
into
they
this
didn't
spooky
mean
place
it,
I don't know about.
He didn't mean to go down.
To go up.
Yeah, it was an accident.
It only went up because they were on the bottom floor.
They thought there was no down.
Yeah. So like he was lowered, and then they tried to bring it back up, and obviously it wouldn't because the house is haunted, and they wanted to traumatize the child. And
that would traumatize the crap out of me. That was a scary scene for me as an adult. I'm like, if I was in that position, I would like pee myself. There'd be no.
It was very intense. It was a very scary moment because he's screaming.
Yeah, and his scream was so.
And she's screaming.
Yeah, Theo's screaming.
His scream was so scary too. Like it was shrill. Holy smokes!
But eventually they get it back up, and Luke is saying that there's something down there. No one believes him. Blah blah blah. But he saw that there was like a stairway in the back, and he tells Theo this, and she finds the cellar and goes down and examines, and obviously there's nothing there. And yeah.
But she finds his piece of his pajamas that were ripped off, so then she knows for sure that like there was something down here that ripped it off of him.
Yeah. But basically,
Spoopy.
Olivia, the mother, tells Theo of of her sensitivity, or as she calls it, whenever she touches hands. So she gives her gloves to protect her hands, and she's worn gloves ever since then, so she wouldn't have to deal with it every time she touched something.
Being as jaded as she is, Theo also kind of thinks that Nellie did this on purpose. Like she killed herself on purpose to like spite everybody, because it seemed, at least in the beginning episodes, that like Nellie had been crazy for a while and had been really like bugging these siblings, and so eventually she just tried to like vie for attention by killing herself. And so Theo was just like annoyed. She was completely livid, and so she decided she was going to go down to where Nellie's body was and touch her body and find out why she did this. And we don't see as a viewer what she sees, but then she just starts like crying, and just like she hits the ground. She freaks out completely. Like she sees something that scares her to the core.
And I think she had that resentment because their mother, supposedly killed herself or whatever.
Yeah. So
she, like growing up, everyone knew how much it hurts and how much it impacts you when someone else commits suicide.
And yet she still did.
And so she thought that her was being selfish because she knew that it was going to hurt all of them, and did it anyway.
Yeah. But through the episode, we learn that Theo's working as a child therapist. She has a few children that she talks with and things like that. She has a child that she can't really read, and the kid is like creates this weird apparition called Mr. Smiley. It's a monster that lives in his basement, and Theo goes to the house where it's a little girl. Theo goes to the house where she lives and uncovers the truth of the situation, which is basically her dad was abusing her very badly.
She was a foster child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Her foster father was like, taking advantage of her.
And she finds this out by like touching the sofa at the basement where she recognized Mr. Smiley, and basically gets him arrested. So there's that. And after that, there's another flashback, basically with their last night in the Hill House. She touches her father as they're on their way out, and we see Hugh and Olivia fighting, and Olivia getting pushed into the wall with her head being hit. So, pieces of the puzzle coming together. So we're like, okay, well, what's going on with, Hugh and Olivia? Why are they fighting? Why is mom and dad being bad to each other? So, that's the next episode.
So, up until this point, we've seen Nell as kind of like a nuisance. Steven didn't like her. Shirley barely tolerated her. Luke was always on drugs and stuff. He never really kind of associated with her as much as anybody else did. And Theo just kind of had her own deal. She wasn't really focusing on Nell. But then we kind of see Nell's perspective, which is interesting. That like we work up to this point where we see how Nell dealt with this, and we find out that like when she was
skipping an episode.
Oh, am I skipping an episode?
This one's on Luke.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. Luke comes before Nell. Sorry.
Yeah. Luke is basically frustrated that nobody believes what he's seeing and things like that. Like, he even has this quote unquote imaginary friend that he sees.
Oh yeah,
Abigail.
Yeah, Abigail, who is obviously not, imaginary. You saw the picture of her wide-eyed stare.
Beautifulness.
Yes.
That's who he's talking to. So Abigail. Yeah.
The hammerhead shark.
No.
She's the child of like the groundskeeper
The
family.
Dudleys.
the Dudleys,
Yeah.
who take care of the home.
Yeah.
The Dudleys.
Yeah.
That's great.
Nobody really knew that she was there because they never spoke about her. They didn't want her going to the house, and
They
she's
go
very
into
secret.
it later of like why and stuff.
Yeah.
And the
But,
Dudleys never really they never really go into they're always there in the house in the mornings, but when the sun goes down, they never go back onto the grounds. They don't even go around the trees around the home. They're like go back home, and they don't deal with
They're not there.
Hill House.
Yeah,
they just
'cause
can't deal with it.
They took care of the previous family that was there as well. I think something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did.
But she sneaks out and like played with Luke sometimes and things like that. And basically there's this ghost that's like taunting Luke. Like each kid has like their own ghost that follows them and stuff like that and creeps them out. Mm-hmm. But we go through Luke's life and like there's this bowler hat guy. Yeah.
Bowler hat guy.
Yeah, he's very tall.
Yeah, he's really
and just
tall,
looms.
Spooky.
And we get to in the present, Luke is trying to become sober. He's in AA.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, he's been
Alcoholic
sober for a while now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for like 90
90
days.
days.
He got his 90-day
days.
thing. Mm-hmm. And we come to find out that like Luke and Nell share the twin thing. I'm sure Scott can attest to.
Yeah. So in this case, it's Dave and I never really got this telepathic connection like strong as this, because the way that they work is that if anybody feels something, whether it's painful or
It
good,
has to be like a really strong emotion.
it has to be a strong feeling. The other person will feel it. So like if someone broke their leg, the other one felt the broke in the leg as well. Or if someone was like sick, the other one felt sick.
So when
even if
Luke
they
was
didn't
going through withdrawals, Nellie could kind of
feel she
the
suffered through it as
withdrawals,
well.
Yeah.
And he's trying to go through this.
That's interesting.
He's trying to go through this therapy, and he's going through this therapy with this girl who has been sober for much longer than he has.
And it's like a live-in clinic.
It's like a live-in thing.
It's an inpatient.
And then so they're celebrating like his sobriety and everything and going on, and the girl that helped him out, she escapes. Well, she doesn't escape. She just breaks out and leaves. And he's like, "Well, I got to go get her because she's so clean. I can't let her break down and
Yeah, I think
mess
she'd
up."
been clean for like
Almost a year,
9 months or something like
yeah,
that.
9 months, because he said you've got a baby of cleanness right now.
Yeah.
And he goes out to find her, and he finds her, and she's already gotten high. I mean, she's already dropped the ball. but he wants to go back to rehab, and so he calls the place and says, hey, I found her, can we go back in? And they said, well, it's a come as you go, we have already got the room filled since you guys left, the policy, I'm sorry, maybe you can check back later. And so he's like, well, I gotta go find some help then. And so he goes to different siblings. He goes to Shirley and then to Steven to try and find money so that they can get a hotel room. Because he's still clean, but he needs to get her clean now. And so Shirley doesn't help him. She's like, no, I've given you tons of money. We've given you help all around. We see that Luke has gone through therapy at least 3 or 4 times. Like, this isn't the first time, nor will they think it's the last time.
For up until this point, had been the only one with money who had a successful business, and so she's been footing the bill
a lot
of everything.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so then we get to Steven, and Steven isn't at the house.
So this is when we lead up to the they're breaking into the apartment.
Yeah, and even though he's clean, something about Luke is starting to affect him. He starts to feel cold. He starts to feel stiff. He starts to feel.
It's like he's going through withdrawal.
It's like he's going through withdrawal.
But he's obviously been clean for 90 days.
Yeah, so Steve doesn't believe him because he looks.
He looks like he's going through withdrawal. Which, as a viewer, we were like, "Oh man, Luke, come on, what are you doing, man?"
We know now.
And but then now we see him, and we're like, "What the heck is going on, Luke? What's going on?" And so then we get to he gets the money for the stuff, but then the girlfriend. Steals Joey.
Well, they're not. He's not.
They're not like dating.
She's not his girl. Yeah.
They're like sponsors of each other, whatever. But basically, she like tricks him. She takes the money and like runs off, and he can't find her. Mm-hmm. And so then he's just out on the street, broke, and
then someone mugs him and takes his shoes.
Yeah. It's just a bad day all around.
Yeah,
and
not a good night.
That's when finally Steve finds him again, and he's like, "Hey, Nell died," and that's when he realizes, I'm feeling cold and stiff because
my twin's dead.
I'm going through my twin's death, and so
and then he was like, "It wasn't suicide."
Yeah.
And the episode ends.
Dun dun.
And then that's when we it's been culminating up to this point where we see Nellie and what she dealt with,
and you're like, what the heck is she doing?
Yeah. So Nell's, like I said before, each kid has their own ghost sort of thing. We kind of see hints of it throughout the series for each kid. And Nell is tormented by this thing she calls the bent neck lady. It's a ghostly figure with an obvious broken neck standing at the foot of her bed or like hovering above her, things like that. And Nell can't move. Like when she sees it, so it's basically like sleep paralysis. As Scott said earlier, and it's very. And if you've ever been through sleep paralysis, it's definitely a very scary thing.
Yeah.
But basically, she goes to see like this sleep doctor, a technologist, I guess it's called.
Yeah, she was a sleep tech or something.
Yeah, and she basically they fall in love, and
he
they
is
get
such
engaged.
a wonderful guy.
Yeah, he's great.
He is so like caring, and like no matter what happens, like if she's dealing with any kind of problem, he like stops everything to take care of her.
Yeah,
and every time go ahead.
She occasionally has sleep paralysis again, and
so how does he die?
Oh yeah, well,
Called it.
So basically, Nell still has these sleep paralysis moments, and like he talks her through it because she like starts like shaking and like seems to have like seizure like symptoms, but obviously he knows it's sleep paralysis because he's a sleep doctor, and he talks her through it and stuff like that. Like he's very supportive of her obvious love there. One of her sleep paralysis episodes, Arthur has a brain aneurysm.
Yeah,
he dies.
What?
But it's
IRL.
But it happens like in the scariest way. Like she's paralyzed, sleep paralysis, and then he gets up to go turn the light on, and his head turns like it like breaks like the bent neck lady, and then he just like shivers and then falls to the ground.
I don't think we said that. Every time she has sleep paralysis, she sees the bent neck lady.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's her.
And so in her mind, this was the bent neck lady killing her husband.
Because she could see him. She could see the bent neck lady behind him as he fell. And basically, she's hopped up on medication and she starts to use it less and less. causing schisms with Theo and Steve, who want her to take it.
And
take the
AKA,
medicine,
she's going cray cray.
But then this is where it gets weird for me because in my mind, from this point, I figured that Nellie has just been crazy this whole time. But up until like her husband's death, until then, it's only been maybe about 3-4 months or something like that. And so the amount of trouble that she's caused these siblings didn't seem to warrant the actions and treatment that she was getting.
Exactly.
From
So
them.
at first we're like, "Gosh, Nellie, you're always
such a
calling
drama
so
queen."
needy." So then you see her story. I'm like, "Dude, her husband died like 3 months ago. Answer the freaking phone, you jerk!"
They were being real buttholes to
Yeah,
her.
like what the heck? Oh, it's Nellie again. Yeah, her husband just died. You idiot. Be supportive.
But I mean, that could be attested to like the brokenness and splinteredness.
I
of the
guess.
family.
Yeah.
Daggum. They turned the switch quick on the crazy button over for her. She's like, well,
And I mean,
she
that's
called me 3
Steven.
times. She must be crazy. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am not regretting not watching this at all, just so you know thus far.
But she drives to the house because
You do.
she was led to it by this calling. Like she's always been drawn to it, and she enters it, and she basically falls under this trance-like state, and she sees like this beautifully renovated mansion, and Arthur was there too. Like she sees this beautiful, time. Like this is how everything should have been, and things like that. And she's at the top of a staircase where she puts a noose around her neck, and imagining that it's her mom's necklace, her locket, and and she gets pushed off the ledge by her mother, breaking her neck. And as she dies, we see her falling and like traveling through all the times of her past, like seeing herself sleeping as a younger and younger state. And obviously the thing that's been haunting her is her body.
Dun 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 dun.
Like, and the
Gosh,
little girl
that is-
screams, and then the scream translates to her hanging, being the bent neck lady, and she is now a ghost of the House of Hill.
yeah.
That was the worst. Holy crap.
That
Yeah, it's pretty
was
intense.
Really
Yeah.
intense.
It was crazy because the bent neck lady never screams except when Arthur died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so and that's the last of her like transition. So it's like
Yeah, that's when she finally, when she
when
gets
she
to the end of her
realizes
track,
who she is.
is her, yeah.
She screams.
And we've seen it like through the episodes up to this point, because every time she freaked out, we saw the bent neck lady. So
Yeah.
it kind of all like came together, and
It
it's
like clicks
holy
in your
crap.
mind, like, oh my gosh, that's her.
Yeah.
She haunted herself.
Which,
So.
Ugh.
That's what I love about this show.
This
It's
show's
like
so
it's,
good.
You're just like,
It's
What?
terrible. It's absolutely terrifying.
and that's only halfway.
yeah,
So we're
so
at the halfway
so
point.
the halfway point is the exposition of all the kids. The next 5 episodes, I guess, to make things easier, because like the episodes are long and they're, we could be here forever, like outlining all the major parts of it. But the next 5 episodes are kind of like them as a family gather together, kind of to get to Nellie's funeral,
Yeah.
and their interactions with each other, and also the
and what
interactions-
happened that night.
Yeah, they're all trying to piece together as a family what happened that night and how they're dealing with it now.
Yeah. And we come to learn that, I mean, the mom was just, she was going crazy. But
And the dad
like,
was aware of it. Yeah.
yeah, in assistance with the ghosts of the house, because the house is like an entity of itself.
Yes.
Like,
It's evil.
there is a supernatural
Burn it.
element to it. And that's the thing. Luke, after Nell had died, tries to go set it on fire.
Yeah.
But he even like pours gas over like the entirety of the foyer and stuff.
And lights it. He lights it.
And the fire goes outward, spreads, and then
Foop.
it goes
Disappears.
away. So, and then he falls under like a similar, dissociation.
Trance.
Like he sees the good life and things like that, and gets taken up to.
Instead of Nellie, with Nellie's deal where she gets this necklace and puts it on, in his case, it's the needle. And instead of the needle of heroin, it's a needle of rat poison that he puts into himself.
Ooh.
Yeah. in which he almost dies, but
No,
Nell,
he saves
who
him.
like after like the family figure out that Luke has gone to the house, they go there as well, and like things start coming together. They save Luke. Well, they all go under a trance, like from the previous family that was there, that was still haunting it, and basically they all get put to sleep, or they get knocked unconscious by ghost powers or whatever.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Nell, being the family member that's still there, saves them by waking them up, and they eventually save Luke, and they all get out except the dad. The dad also dies for some reason. I guess he didn't take his pill on time or something like that.
I think he actually chose to because he wanted to stay with his wife. Like he's reached to a point where I've lived my life.
Yeah.
My kids are gonna be fine.
Because
Now they
we
know
see,
all the secrets.
yeah,
So-
we see that the house makes them corporeal, I guess you could call it. Is it a corporeal
Corporeal.
state? Corporeal, whatever. And they're actually there, like their souls are still there, and they're living together peacefully,
And then
despite being a meal for the house or whatever.
Yeah. So we see
Jack,
what happens
who's-
that night too, like the night. And so we see what the wife, why she went crazy. So the house was showing her, Luke and Nell older, and them dying, and how they
Yeah.
die. And so the house
And-
was basically like, you have to, quote, awaken them from this dreamlike state.
Yeah, to protect them.
To
Like
protect.
this was the only way to protect them. Like the outside world was horrible. They're still asleep, and everything. The darkness was going to take them, etc. And the house was, I guess, trying to show that that the house could protect them. But of course, that means dying. So
And so we see that the mom, she was getting more and more crazy as time went on, but then it gets to this culminated point where the father sends her away. She comes back in the middle of the night, and she goes into the kitchen, and she grabs rat poison and tea, and she makes tea with the rat poison in it.
And no one knows that she's back. So the husband thinks she's
just,
she's with her sister in another state, getting some mental help.
Yeah. And so the father takes this tea and wakes up Luke and Nellie and brings her up to the red room. But they also see Abigail, and that's when we realize, hey, Abigail's a real girl. She's not just a spirit that Luke's seen.
Yeah.
And that's the Dudley's kid. So this is, take a note here, this is the first time Abigail's been in the house.
Yeah.
Ever.
And the first time that it's actually founded that Abigail is a real
Person.
child.
So we take these three kids up to this room, and she dishes out the tea to them. The first and only person to drink this tea is Abigail, who then dies a very horrible death in front of everybody. And that's when the father comes in, shoves the wife against the wall,
And pushes
takes the
her,
kids,
yeah.
and
so
then
that's
runs
what
out.
Theo sees way back in the gap is
Yeah.
her dad pushing her mom against the wall, but what he's doing is
Protecting the
stopping
kids.
her from killing all the kids.
yeah.
So
yeah.
So
So-
she as that happened, she also kind of broke her ankle or something like that, and so that's why when we see him carrying Stephen and the other kids, you see her stumbling through the hall like a zombie of some sort. I thought she was possessed or something,
Yeah.
or that she was dead and was coming back to life or something.
Because
was,
she's crawling,
shambling and crawling and
creepily,
stuff.
but it's because she has a broken ankle.
Yeah, and so she finally gets her into the car and drives off and everything, and then she realizes, before I can awaken my kids, I have to awaken, and that's when she jumps off of the top of the staircase and kills herself.
Yeah. But the Dudleys also knew this. That's what the house did. Because
Yeah.
whenever they found her daughter, their daughter, Abigail, they were like, she belongs to the house now.
Yeah.
And she's she exists here now. They weren't broken up about her dying or whatever.
Awesome.
So apparently there was a plan to do that anyway, because later on, in the next episode, we see them at older. Mr. Dudley brings his wife to the house where she dies, and she becomes
A spirit.
corporeal.
Yeah.
And
She
is
can
holding
rape the
Abigail.
babies again, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really touching story. That's what really gets heartwarming, because the mom and Nellie and the Dudley's mother and the children that she has as
Yeah.
well, they're all gathered together along with the old family of the house before, And
Living
so
together.
they're all living together, even though like the circumstances could have been better that they received them time there. Like it's really cool to see them all together again.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a deal that they struck up. So that's why, I don't know if he could, but that's why the dad never destroyed the house. Because he had a deal with the Dudleys that, like, you can see your daughter anytime, and you won't tell the police, like she committed murder, and, you know, ruin her good name and stuff like that. And his whole thing was he had to live to make sure his kids didn't go back there. So he was kind of shielding his kids from the house. So the kids didn't know what happened. The kids didn't know that the house really is evil. But now that they do know, and they know to stay away, he feels okay to go enjoy
Leave
his
them
wife.
alone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at the same time, you know, even though the house has fed on them, like it's still giving them like a happy ending of sorts.
Oh,
Yeah, because they can all be
So it's
together.
not completely evil, I would say, but
Yeah.
you know, it's a
wants,
dangerous entity.
Yeah, it wants them to never leave, basically.
Yeah.
Anyone that lives there to stay forever.
The last 5 episodes seem to like show the dynamic between the father and the mother of these kids, and I really I love the dad a lot, and he gets a lot of grief from the kids as adults, and they love the mother, but they don't really see how crappy she was as a mother.
Yeah, she wasn't a good mom.
before she went crazy. Like even before she was crazy, she was like very frou-frou. Like she's like, you can all live and do whatever you'd like, but just don't bother me while I'm drawing or drafting or whatever.
Yeah, like we kind of like were more harsh on her, so we like paid attention to like previous, because they're like, oh, we loved our mom so much, we wish that you had died instead, we hate you, you're a deadbeat dad. But when you see the flashbacks, the mom is like prancing around not doing anything.
Yeah,
and
literally
then
nothing.
they'll come in and be like, Mom, help, and she's like, oh honey, I have a headache, I can't.
Yeah.
And just like, or she was literally drawing one day, and she's like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm busy, can you go
I'm drawing
somewhere?
our forever home.
I'm drawing my forever home, can you go somewhere else?
Yeah, like, can you go away?
But
And
then
you're
the
like, what
dad,
heck?
but the dad is like doing actual physical work. He's like trying to restore the house, and every time the child comes, he stops what he's doing, and he talks to him.
Yeah.
Or if they have a bad nightmare or they're screaming, it's
He's
always
the
the
one.
dad that gets up out of bed, goes and checks on him, makes sure everything's okay. Like, he's an amazing dad, and they just don't remember that part.
It even got to a point, there was a scene where he was helping, he and Steven were down in the basement trying to take care of some mold. And Steven unplugged
Black
the
mold, I bet.
fan. Yeah, black mold. He unplugged the
bad.
fan or whatever, and the dad was working on the fan, and the fan plugged in on its own somehow and turned on while the dad's hand was in it, and it cut his hand. And instead of
cut his fingers off.
Yeah, cut his
like, it wasn't a
Well,
smear flesh.
Well, it didn't cut him off, but it was cut bad,
Yeah,
really bad.
yeah, it was
but
pretty
like
bad.
it was bad enough that like I feel like as a dad he would have just been like, get out of here. But instead he was like, it's okay, Steven, I understand. Like it's not your fault. It's like
It's an accident.
you
Please
know,
go get help.
basically, can I do anything for you? And I'm like, really? Your hand just got like mashed.
Balls
Like,
off.
so.
Yeah.
And
But
so
yeah,
like
and
he
then
kind of.
and then oh, go ahead.
Sorry. No, I was just gonna say, like, as an adult though, like he's kind of like a bad A too. Like he knows this house, he knows all the secrets and stuff. And so while these kids are like as adults coming back to the home and seeing all these crazy things happening and stuff, he's like, no, focus with me. You keep eyes on me. Don't look at the ghost behind you. Follow me. I know what to do here. And you're just like, whoa, dude, he's like the ghost master right now. Like. He really was like
He
so
is
when
the Ghostbuster.
When the bowler hat guy came, he's like
The Kung Fu Ghost Master.
yeah, like when the bowler hat guy came and Steven was like walking towards him, he's like, look at
at
me.
me.
And like the bowler hat guy kind of like walked away.
Ethan,
and,
you've
like,
seen Leverage, right?
Yeah.
Nah.
What?
No?
Oh man.
Nah.
Oh, well, he's the guy off Leverage, but you don't understand that, so
You're thinking of David.
you're the same person.
It's a weird thing to say to not
To not
David's
his
twin.
Yeah.
I feel like Ethan's more.
When I went on a
David's
mission,
twin.
David earned a second twin, and that was Ethan. So
David and I have plenty of different tastes. Thank you very much.
Well, Leverage
Yeah,
is
Ethan
one
has
he's
no taste.
actually right in.
yeah,
So
Leverage
I
is really
recommend
good.
that.
yeah.
Yeah, I know he likes Leverage. He likes a lot of those
Heist.
crime shows.
Yeah.
But anyway, going back to Hill House, like the dad dies, he stays with his wife, and like with Nell and like the previous family that's still there, and the family basically comes back together after that. Like the remaining siblings of Theo, Stephen, Luke, and Shirley, they all become more bonded.
Happy
And
ending.
they celebrate Luke's sobriety together of like a year or whatever, how long it was.
Yeah, it was a year.
Yeah.
And they're all happy. They don't have any more hauntings or anything like that because the house is sated, I guess.
For now.
And
Yeah,
that's
house is full.
that's
all
how
good.
it goes.
This is good. And
That's
so in
terrible.
retrospect of the show, a lot what I really really loved is there's so many subtle details that like aren't jump scares. That's literally you have to be looking for it, and they never like call upon it. They never show it. So it's literally just you catching random things. So like I would pause and rewind and stuff. So there's times when they walk by and statues are facing one way, and then when they come back by, they're facing another way. There's one scene when he's in the basement that if you look really, really hard in the corner, there's like a face. And they never talk about it. He never sees it. You never see that ghost again. But it's just something, there's always something in the background.
Or like statues will turn.
Yeah,
that
in
you
the
don't
house
realize.
that's happening that like you're not even seeing or picking up.
And like Steven, even though Steven's like still a cynic and he doesn't really understand and stuff, the dad, after they kind of defeat whatever it is and satiate the house or whatever, he takes Steven back into the house for a quick second and tells him some of the things where he's like, you've seen a ghost before. That clock man that you wrote about in your book, there was no clock man. I never hired a guy to fix our clock. He's like, that treehouse that Luke played in, there is no treehouse. That didn't exist. That was the red room that your mother tried to kill everybody in.
That dance studio, that didn't
Yeah,
exist.
that didn't exist. Like the red room was a different room for each child. It was a dance room for Theo, or a treehouse for Luke, or a playhouse for Steven, like all these different things. And he's like, that's the house doing these things to you. You've seen ghosts regularly, and you just didn't know. And then that's when he realizes that he's been talking to his father's ghost, and he finds his father's body. And he's like, yeah, Steven, I'm a ghost. Deal with it. And just like, you're like,
And
oh,
he's like,
shoot.
oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay, bye.
Yeah, he's like, okay, bye, Dad. Yeah.
Love you.
So
That's
Yeah.
a really cool concept. I like that.
Yeah, and it's a good
Yeah, I'm
ending.
probably
Like,
not gonna watch it.
considering everything that happened.
Yeah,
it was,
for a horror movie,
it was a really nice.
It's an actually happy, good ending
Yeah,
Oh, good.
for the most part.
That's a
for the most part.
couple points in its favor. But yeah, it does seem pretty grim for the most part.
Yeah, but it was good. It was very good, and a horror thing that can be scary without having jump scares is a great horror movie or series.
I definitely agree.
Because as someone said before, a jump scare in a horror movie is like a comedian going out and tickling the audience to make them laugh.
yeah,
Yeah,
So,
I agree.
10 out of
That
10
makes
would
sense.
haunt again.
well, I would say 10 out of 10, but I would give it like an 8 out of 10.
Whatever.
Wow, the hard critic.
It got an 8.3 out of 10 on what you call it, the
Well,
Rotten
then
Tomatoes.
my rating comes in line with the professional
Yeah,
critics.
he's like way
eh?
closer than you. Why would you say that? Why would that be an argument?
It wasn't an argument. I was just pointing it out.
Stop.
Splendid. Well, thank you, everyone.
How'd you like that trip before, Ethan?
Oh,
You
it
should
was
totally
delightful.
watch it.
You should definitely
Nope.
watch it.
Not gonna happen.
What a weenie.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I don't appreciate. But it sounds lovely. I like a lot of the concepts in horror and like the explanations and things. I just don't like actually being afraid, so I don't watch them. Yeah. You all recommend it. Very good to watch.
Yep.
Everyone should watch it, except for me.
Except for
Or if you
Ethan.
if you don't like scary things, don't worry about it.
Or if you're a
you just
weenie
learned
like
all
Ethan.
of it from us.
Weenie
Yes.
Junior.
That's perfectly fine.
So yeah, we should probably lightning round the what we're nerding
Let's
out
go ahead
to.
and move on to what we are nerding out to. I'll start since I don't have much. I have been nerding out to Moonlighter, really. That's honestly it. It has been taking so much of my time. Well, what took most of my time this week was moving. I had a 3-day weekend, and all of it was spent moving. So when I got a little bit of time, I did Moonlighter, and gosh, I like it. It just makes me want to keep playing it, and I'm starting to get into some more of the intricate stuff, upgrading my shop, taking on quests from people, like requesting different things, and
literally the same
fighting
thing
through
you were
the
doing
second
before.
dungeon, and huh?
I said literally the same thing you were doing before.
It's so fun, but like they're just tiny things to it that you learn as you go, and it's a good time. I enjoy it a lot. Also, I'm discovering a lot of bugs. It's kind of buggy, which is kind of funny sometimes. Sometimes I just walk through the wall, and I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'll have to teleport. It's interesting. I don't know if the Steam version is this buggy or if the bugs are resulting from them porting it. Yeah. But I still enjoy playing it despite the bugs. So I think that's a mark of a good game.
That's good.
I plan to see The Crimes of Grindelwald. We'll see when that happens. But yeah, that's about it for me.
That's good.
Mm-hmm. What have you been up to, Eddie?
Not very much. I got my werewolf skin on Fortnite. Wow. So I'm happy about that.
Mazel tov.
Yeah, right. Mazel tov to me. I've been playing. I played Mario Party at the party. It was very good. Feels a lot like the older Mario parties. But other than that, I mean, that's about it for me.
I'm still playing The Witcher, so that's been fun.
Gotcha.
And I guess we're about to start nerding out to Pokemerge, so I'm excited for that.
Sweet.
And Scott's not here
Awesome.
because he left to go get Pokemon. So that is it.
Interesting.
Marvelous.
Well, goodbye,
Freaking
Scott.
Yeah.
That's not a good thing, but we'll talk about that later.
Oh, that's the other thing. I will be playing Let's Go Pikachu as well.
bunch of
Are y'all getting Eevee?
nerds.
I don't know.
Yeah, we're doing Eevee.
Y'all getting? Yeah, I'll be getting Let's Go Pikachu tomorrow as well, assuming I can find a place that has it. I don't think I'll have that big of a problem though.
No, I don't think so.
But yeah, super excited about that. And anyway, I think that about wraps it up for us this week. Thank you for listening, and thank you for sharing with a friend. We appreciate that. You can please like, comment, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating on iTunes if you feel so inclined. That would be wonderful. It helps out quite a bit. You can find the pod on iTunes, Podbean, Castbox, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, YouTube. Find us on Facebook. Give us a like. Do all of those things. We very much appreciate all of your support. If you'd like to get in contact with us, let us know how you felt about Haunting of Hill House. You can find us on Twitter at TNYKPod, or you can drop us a line via email at thosenerdsyouknowpod@gmail.com. Well, that's about it for us this week. My name is Ethan.
I'm Eddie.
And I'm Kaleigh.
And we are Those Nerds You Know.
Bye.
Bye.
I can't hear a single thing he said.
Yeah, you're very garbled. I'm sorry.
Blah, 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 blah,
It's
blah,
so bad. Ethan, holy crap.
blah,
Oh, like an
Blah,
android
blah.
powering down.
blah, 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 blah,
Oh my god.
blah, blah, blah.
Try
Bleep, bleep,
disconnecting
blah,
again.
blah,
And
bloop.
do it again.